Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. My name is Christopher Lam. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're a couple of minutes late. I do apologize. Let's hope that we make up for it. With my guest this evening, Mr. Vincent Alexander, a long-standing GCOM commissioner. Mr. Alexander, thank you very much for coming on Plain Talk this evening.
Thank you for having me.
You've been a commissioner now for over 15 years. It seems to me that it's a lifetime appointment.
Yes,
practically.
Yes, because the way the appointment is fashioned, once you're appointed, there's no mechanism for your removal unless you resign or you are involved in serious impropriety. Other than that, there's no mechanism. Even the body that appoints you has no mechanism to remove you, unless something is done behind the scenes, which probably some people do.
When you say the body that appoints you, essentially is the president that
Well, the
appoints you.
president's appointment,
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, you're a nominee of a political entity.
Yes.
That's the reference I was making. And the president nor that body can remove you.
Do you find that a healthy situation, a lifetime appointment?
Well, probably the lifetime appointment is not healthy. But what is healthy is that if you are someone who really believes that it's a constitutional office, then in some regards you become untouchable.
Yeah, but there are other constitutional officers that are not untouchable.
Well,
Why should a GCOM commissioner be untouchable?
in this sense, that as a constitutional officer, you should not be serving a particular partisan interest. And if you are removable by those who nominate you, then in your interest, you may find it necessary to kowtow to them.
No, and that's not what I'm thinking about.
But that's what I am thinking about.
No, good. I'm thinking about, okay, 5-10 years must be certainly the contribution
Well,
one can make.
I agree with you that term limits is useful, right? So that, yes, we can get a compromise here, that there's a term limit, but that during that term, you are untouchable, so
Yes,
that...
no, that's
so
fine, that's
we can-
fine.
we can get a
Except
compromise there.
for some egregious
Yeah,
misconduct.
yeah.
Has that issue been raised other than by persons who say, look, I can't be touched?
No, I don't.
And should that form part of our
I
reform?
think it should form, the whole question of the GCOM Commission should form part of our reform. Yes, in terms of the composition of GCOM, in terms of, we have a situation now where one person determines what happens at GCOM,
That's the chairperson.
the chairperson. Obviously, you may argue it's under the influence of one or the other side, but it's one person who makes the determination.
Except that if that's assuming that the two branches are always at loggerhead and vote against each
Well,
other.
let me say two things about that. Yesterday's meeting, a commissioner said unequivocally, a lawyer that we who are sitting here represent political parties.
Isn't that nonsense? Isn't that
It's
nonsense?
not nonsense, it's truth. Insofar as that's what he
That
does.
person, yeah. But interesting you bring that up. Because, and you know, the other day there was a vacancy, Bibi Shadiq, a PPP member of parliament.
Who also virtually said that
Yeah.
she represents the PPP.
Yeah, that's a tragic situation, but I do respect her soul, and I can only pray for her. But there is nothing in the Constitution that says these people are representative of a political party.
Absolutely
It says
nothing.
there shall be 6 members of the commission who shall be appointed in the following manner. 3 members to be appointed by the president acting in his or her own deliberate judgment, and 3 members to be appointed by president acting in accordance with the advice of the leader of the opposition. Why is it both the president and the leader of the opposition somehow think these are political appointees? They come from, I was giving you the example just now. Bibi Shadiq dies, next day when he is sworn in. These are not independent constitutional officers you would expect to be independent.
I think that's the nature of politics in Guyana, both at the level of the institutions and at society at large. And let me tell you why I think so. Evidence of why I think so. I have not been a member of the People's National Congress Reform in 2007. I have had at least one or two.
Is that because you became a commissioner?
No, I withdrew. I
Okay.
was not in my membership, but it coincided at the same time. I have had at least one or two public confrontations with the past leaders of the People's National Congress during that period. But there isn't a single Guyanese out there who accepts that I am not some leader of the PNC. So that's how we are wired. That's how we are wired. So this culture is pervasive in Guyana. You're either one way or the other. There are few people who do not see you as being one way or the other.
Well, on this question, it does start with the president. He could have said, look, I am going to get and you're pointing out, this one person really decides in a very conflicted GCOM and environment. One person decides, or often does not decide, just
One or the other.
does make decisions. This says 3 members to be appointed by the, can the president find a member of civil society who fits this bill?
Does he want to find a member of
No.
society who fits
No,
the
my
bill?
question was a bit rhetorical.
Right? Because I'm of the view that from what I've witnessed since I'm there, that there's some people who literally sign their resignation as a basis for being appointed, so that when they don't meet the bill, it's handed in. You know, if you study the composition of GCOM and the changes that have occurred, and ask yourself why those changes occurred, it had to be political reasons, and it had to be that the people were either under pressure or there was a fiat.
But you see, I see in the media makes this error. It says PPP commissioner, but there's no such thing. There's no
such thing.
It's a GCOM commissioner.
I have contested that, and they have come around now to saying PPP nominated. or
Yeah, that's a
PPP
different. Yeah,
nominated.
yeah.
They've come around to.
Well, it's not even a PPP. This one here for the 3 members appointed by the president in his own deliberate judgment has nothing to do with PPP.
That's true.
Nothing to do with PPP.
That's true. Except with the president is PPP. and
And,
again,
and
we,
for somehow,
we do not accept. You know, very often in political systems, the attempt is made to have the president identified in a manner that puts him above the fray.
yeah.
In the case of Guyana, our political system pulls the president from the pit of the party. So we haven't attempted to, except for when we had a titular president
Yeah.
in Arthur Chung, who could not be identified with the party. Our president comes from.
Yeah. But you know, when Vola Lawrence said, I know only PNC people, the way the president behaves, and all presidents, in relation to this article of the Constitution, suggests that they only know party people. And I regret saying that about Irfan Ali. That's what he does. He only knows for this purpose only PPP people. And you wonder whether, when the Constitution says in his or her own deliberate judgment, it's really the party's judgment.
I think it's the party's judgment.
But this makes a mockery of the Constitution. It makes, and so people blame the system. They blame Carter Price. Now, I think Carter Price should be abolished. That formula should be abolished. I don't know what's your view, but the president behaves as though this is a PPP appointment.
The only advantage with the Carter Price formula, and I've said it repeatedly, is that you know what you've got. Outside of that, there is no advantage in that formula at this point in time. The problem that what I've just said poses is that what's the real extent to which we have pure civil society, so that you may pretend that, well, it takes someone from civil society, but it may be well somebody who is undercover, so to speak. So you get the same person in a different form. So that, for me, the question is a question of Guyana's political culture. Do we have a society where people do not act in concert with a particular party, irrespective of where they're located?
You have been in political life in Guyana for quite some time.
For 52 years.
Yeah. Would you like to answer that question that you've just posed?
Personally?
Yes.
Let me put it this way. I consider myself a free agent, but I will not join in public pulling down of the PNC, because the political environment, if I join, the political environment is as such that is all it would be. It would not be objective criticism of the PNC. It would be, I was joining those who want just to pull it down. So I am careful not to get involved and to become an instrument of people who are literally enemies of the PNC in the name of objectivity. Because though it may be in the name of objectivity, it would not serve that objective in our political environment.
Interesting you say that, because my next question is this: should GCOM commissioners, who clearly the public look to them as, look, you have a high, noble constitutional office, and here you're behaving like some third-rate gutter politician. That's what I've seen in some cases. Do you believe that GCOM commissioners should be out there making partisan statements, partisan political statements?
I would have to qualify what is considered to be partisan political statements. But ideally, commissioners should not be in that space. Ideally, they should not be. Statements may be seen to be partisan political statements when they coincide with the views of a particular political party, although it may be the considered opinion of the person making the statement. But the issue here is that in an environment that is poisonous, GCOM has a poisonous environment, that one is forced to be out there making statements that may appear to be partisan political statements, because what emanates from GCOM, if one does not make those statements, then one is held responsible for what's coming out of GCOM, when in fact sometimes one does not concur with what's coming out of GCOM. GCOM has operated, in my view, with serious flaws in terms of decision making.
Is that systemic, or is it because of the chairperson or the commissioners?
It is not systemic. It is not systemic.
Then it's people.
So far, it's people, and it's a reflection of the political culture of the nation. So our problem is political culture, and we have got to find ways and means to do things to change that culture, or not to have people trapped by that culture.
Yeah, but look, I don't know your age. I'm not going to ask you to say it. What you did say you've been around 52 years in politics. That must put you over 60.
I started from high school.
Okay, good. But surely the young people would expect that somebody gonna start taking the lead and behave properly. But not, you use the word ideal. I don't think it's idealistic to expect people to behave professionally and without partisan rancor. There's nothing idealistic about that. That's basic decency.
We are in society. Societies normally can be at a particular time related to an ethos.
Mm-hmm.
We are in a society where the ethos is individualism and being smart. We do not have anything happening in our society, in our education system, in our organizations, where values and that one called ethics that's associated with good governance are high on the agenda. You don't hear our leaders talking about values.
But I regard you as a leader. Why don't you talk about it?
I do, but I said our leaders don't. They bandy the word sometimes when they talk about good governance. But you don't see them with a concerted effort to push the nation in a particular direction in relation to values, in relation to integrity.
So are we stuck in this morass of indecency and lack of integrity and ethics and principles?
I wouldn't say we're stuck out of the hope that things could change, but we're certainly caught up.
And for how long have we been so caught up?
I think it has emerged over time. It has emerged over time, but we are at the worst at this time. It's emerged.
I was about to ask you, is it getting better or worse?
Worse. It's gotten worse. You know, let me show you what I'm talking about. I work in the university there and interacting with young people. People would come to me. And I would say to people, but we can't do it that way. And people would sit and say to me, Chief, something wrong with you. That is how it happens, and that's how it has to be done. And I've had many instances then and even now when people say to me, something is wrong with you. It don't work so, Chief. It don't work so. Look, I work with UG. I'm giving service.
You still look?
I'm on the council. I'm back on the
Yes.
council. I'm giving service to people. And I'm giving service to people. At the end of the day, when I'm giving service, somebody goes into the bag and take out a brown paper bag. I haven't asked them, haven't suggested, but that's the way they see things. And I have to say, no, please, I've given you service, put that back in your bag. I've had that experience at UG.
Yeah.
So people accept in this country that that is the ethos, that is the way things are done. We have literally got to grow a new generation.
But you're saying that it's young people who tell you that? And speaking to you as a chief?
Yeah, when I say new generation, I mean you got to start from kindergarten and grow a new generation.
You know, I used to have, when I was young, I used to have this idea that, okay, those old rats can go die and go, they beget worse than themselves. It doesn't get better.
Yes, because they and the system does nothing for it to get better. We have got to consciously, at the level of the education system, and hopefully the level of our community organizations, our churches and so on, consciously embrace values that are shared with young people in a manner that generationally change occurs. That's our challenge. That's the only way it's going to happen given where we're at. And that will take some level of leadership. And we know that in society, out of the blue sometimes you have that kind of leader popping up who represents that change and pursues that change.
That often is less than once in a generation. If you take the real great
I
leaders,
hope for Guyana.
Well, let me ask you this question. Have we reached the bottom of the barrel? In terms of ethics and culture and behavior and so on.
No, we haven't reached the bottom of the barrel, simply because some people still seek to publicly articulate what they don't practice. When we get to the point where there's no articulation whatsoever, then we're at bottom. And may I say this, that in that articulation there's hope. Because if people articulate certain things, and they held to their articulation, they can sometimes involuntarily go through a process of changed behavior. Not because they want to behave that way, but because they want people to believe what they say, and people are challenging them to demonstrate what they say, then you start to get some elements of that demonstration.
But if we were to look at political dialogue now, things have changed very dramatically with your TikTok and your Facebook and Twitter and all these things. It does seem to me that there is less vibrancy in society now in terms of articulation and debating. Like you could have a national strategy and people, and it's not national at all.
That is true. And this is a part of the superstructural elements of neoliberalism. This thing that people are individuals who could pursue any course of action that they wish to pursue, starting from economic activities. It's a part of the superstructure of that. That, who are you to tell me what to do? So that there is no national system of values. It's the value system is I am free to do what I feel like. So that, what amazes me, Chris, and this is not about Guyana. When I was growing up, coursing was taboo. Was taboo. When I was growing up, the Americans coursed. But they coursed without coursing. In other words, they used coarse words, but they weren't ascribing the use of those words to individuals. Today in the world, it amazes me, whether it's the British, the Americans, on television, and wherever, it's a norm now to course, which suggested that there's been a slippage of values across the globe. Christians may have something to say about that. They may say it's damnation and then we come into the end.
We've been hearing that a long time.
A very long time.
Now, you raised this question, of course. I'm sure you read the Guardian. It's free.
Yes, I read it.
And the four-letter word is...
Yeah, it's a norm.
Yeah,
It's a norm.
they call that accurate reporting.
It's a norm, no.
Now, sticking with this commission business, do you believe it is time that we dispense once and for all with this Carter price model for the GCOM?
I think we need to seriously explore changing it.
And could you just say what the Carter price model is?
All right, I want to say two things. Let me say the Carter price model first, since you asked. The Carter price model prescribes that the composition of GCOM should be of 7 persons, and that those 7 persons should be nominees, 3 of the leader of the opposition in consultation with parties in the opposition, and 3 by the president in his own deliberate judgment.
Right.
That's what it is. In the context of Guyana politics, basically what you're doing is lining up the government and the opposition by that. And the next element to get the 7th is that the leader of the opposition must make a list of people from which the president picks 1. And so the idea there is that that person should be, for all intents and purposes, a neutral person.
Yes.
Now we saw what happened last time, that every time a list was put up, the president didn't feel that any one of them was fit for purpose.
And one of those included me.
Right? And
I
so-
carry that stigma,
and
not
so-
fit and proper for the rest of my life.
And so eventually, I don't know what happened, whether it was in the back room or what, but because my own view is that prior to that, there was negotiations behind the scene
Yeah.
before the list was constructed, so there was no problem when the list was put up. Both parties knew who would be knocked out, and I think eventually they might have come to that, to eventually get the person who replaced Patterson. But having said that, I think one has to be careful with the personality of the person who's chosen. There was a Steve Shrewsbury. I've only been exposed to 3 chairpersons: Shrewsbury, Patterson, and the current chairperson. But there was something that Shrewsbury did which led to the operation of GICA.
Positively or negatively?
Positively, I would say.
Okay.
One, he consulted. So he would even have one-on-one consultations and field commissioners out, you know. So he didn't deal with you as a block. He dealt with you as individuals. 2, he brought his own ideas to the table. So sometimes he confronted both sides, so to speak, with his own ideas. And 3, he always tried to work towards a
Consensus?
consensus. So the personality was critical in that regard. We unfortunately have a chairperson who, in some regards, tries to operate judge-like. In other words, not to bring thoughts and ideas to the table, to sit back, and to have the sides confront
Make
each
your
other,
submission.
and then to say, I will give a ruling.
Yeah.
But the ruling really is in effect a vote.
Yes.
It's in effect a vote. But not to participate, not to pose questions to people as they put their ideas out, and to try to steer things. That unfortunately doesn't occur. And you know, that, and I'm going to go a little beyond that now, that struck me, that kind of situation struck me when the Commission of Inquiry was appointed. 3 judges. The issues that GCOM would have been faced with are not purely legal issues. They're administrative issues. They're human resource issues. They're IT issues. And you put 3 judges to inquire into GCOM. So that basically you've decided in a sense that the issues are legal issues.
But who appointed those people?
The President.
So that's for the president. That's nothing to do with GCOM itself.
No, but the point I'm making, as I said, I'm part of the bit to what we were discussing, is that we seem not to understand the nature of things. And in not understand the nature of things, or not to appreciate the nature of things, we make decisions that will not deliver the good that is required. 3 judges, what do they know about IT? And if somebody comes up there and starts to talk about the IT issues that may have led to problems in GCOM, you know, if we had done it differently from an IT perspective, the administrative issues, the human resource issues. So really a panel like that should have people across those professions. And let me go a little further. And I'm taking out of the field. When I was involved in the local government reform process, my own disposition was I was an advocate for the local government commission. But I was an advocate who said, look, that commission should have the Bar Association make a nominee, so it's not a political appointee. Should have the Engineering Association make a nominee. Should have the Human Resource people make a nominee. Should have the Public Health people make a nominee. So that what you bring together is a team of professionals who can speak to the issues affecting local authorities, the legal issues, the manpower issues, the engineering issues, the human resource issues, and not get put together 6 people who are political appointees, more or less, who are looking over the shoulders to see what the politicians are saying. That was my hope for the Local Government Commission. It did not happen. And all of the politicians have to take responsibility for that.
Well, I think, like, for example, when they have to deal with something of integrity, they feel, oh, you get some Hindu, Muslim, and Christian. Now, what makes you think that those people have any more integrity than the average Guyanese?
In Guyana, when you get a Muslim, a Hindu, and a Christian, the political persuasion is a determining factor, not whether Muslim, Hindu, or Christian. If you look at the Constitution Reform Commission we had, for example, Jafar Ali was the Muslim youth representative. You understand what I'm saying to you, Chris?
So if you were to, you said in the affirmative that you think the time has come for the Carter Price model to be dispensed with. What would you replace it with?
We have to look at how the Jamaicans have attempted to deal with their problem. They have not excluded the politicians, but they've included civil society in a manner that the voice of the politicians is not a determinant voice. That's how they've attempted to deal with it. Even though I have my reservations about our civil society, I think we have to go in the direction where the people who are directly, whose appointment may be based on a signature of the reservation, are not the ones who are making, don't have the weight to determine the decision.
Mr. Alexander, you must be aware of Article 155 of the Constitution regarding dual citizenship.
Yes.
Now, you, I am sure, would be aware that citizens have for years and years been complaining that GCOM has fallen down in its responsibility, allowing persons with dual citizenship, which must have been known to them, to violate this Constitution. Why did you, Vincent Alexander, not do something about it?
Let me answer that question this way. I must confess that within my focus, that was not one of the issues to which I was paying significant attention.
So you're saying you ignored it? I, for one, raised it on a number of occasions.
I wouldn't say, no. At the point at which you raised it, I was in the mix already. But prior to that, it wasn't, you could be involved in something, but not everything is, in a sense, on your foot border. It wasn't necessarily on my foot border. But even when it came onto the foot border, you could turn out to be quite a minority. For example, in the last elections, we raised the question of dual citizenship, and justly so, and there were people who were ineligible, and I would say at least one of those persons have still made his way into Parliament because of the attitude of GCOM. And the person come belated, and GCOM turns a blind eye in the fact that the point in time when the decision was to be made, the person was not eligible. So we seem to be driven not by norms and values, we seem to be driven by interests.
And forget the Constitution.
Yeah, that is true.
But do you hold yourself partly responsible for this?
Well, the extent to which, as I said in the earlier days, it wasn't in my focus. One cannot not hold oneself responsible if you didn't pay attention to all that attention should have been paid to. But in these organizations, you grow over time, and one can overcome initial deficiency.
Let me raise now. that became such a farce because a party that was complaining about Charan Das Prasad, who was a dual passport holder, had in its very leadership people with dual passport. I mean, it became almost farcical. Why do we have to have the court ruling on something like this? We've got enough cases around the world, and we have 2 cases in Trinidad.
Do you know this matter goes back, and that kind of threw me off? It went back to the Ramsari. That was, I think, the first case that, and nothing was done about that. Ramsari.
But then why didn't you, somebody should say, well look, I'm going to court for this.
Ramsari. That was the first one, and it was raised, I think. I'm not sure if it went to court, but it was.
It didn't go to court.
Ramsari case was raised.
That's a real tragedy. Let me ask you another one. I think it's section 208 of the Representation in People Act. 208, 230, something like that. Let me don't call a number. It has provision for an election expense report to be submitted within 35 days of the elections. I have written GCOM about this, and I have had the astounding response from a person who was a judge of the Court of Appeal. Look, we have not bothered with this piece. The GCOM never bothered to operationalize that provision of the law. Now my question is this. Now I know it's inappropriate, it needed some tweaking. That was more than, but it still is part of the law.
Wow.
That was for when we had first past the post, I'm sure. Why again did GCOM sit on its rear and do nothing about this? And now you have your commission, because you're part of it, still doing nothing about it.
Let me respond to that this way. GCOM has refused to be involved in any initiative towards reform. You've spoken about the expenses issue.
Yes, I wrote GCOM as
There
well.
are other issues. Every time you attempt to raise one of those issues, you're told that's for the legislature. Leave it to the politicians.
That is nonsensical.
That is what is currently happening.
You got lawyers on that thing and telling you that
That
crap.
is what they tell you. I'm telling you. I have raised matters in GCOM, and the responses leave that. In other words, we can't make any propositions. We are just an administrative operation, whatever the law is. You saw GCOM's recent statement about, which was not representative of all of us in GCOM,
Yeah.
that in terms of the elections list, they're working with the law. Of course they're working with the law. But we know that law could become irrelevant, law could become obsolete, law could become redundant. And if you have a mandate, which is an ideal, and the law becomes useless in relation to your mandate, you're a stakeholder.
That's correct.
And therefore you should take a
Absolutely. These
action.
people, look, these people, I would bet that Claudia Singh has not written the Law Reform Commission and said this has to change.
We've not written them on anything.
I mean, what kind of
Right.
incompetence we
We've not
have
written them on anything.
at these levels?
Right?
Because that must surely be, she must know that.
Okay. We've not written them on anything.
Let me ask you this as well. Were you one of the persons who supported the view, or who did not support the view, that the Constitution, by a simple reading of the Constitution, 33 was a majority of 65? Where did you stand on
I
that
never
debate?
expressed a view on the matter.
No, but I'm asking you now.
I never expressed a view on the matter. I'll answer it this way. From a pure maths perspective, the case is arguable. From a pure maths perspective. But I never thought that that was the case that should have been made. I felt personally that from a jurisprudential perspective, that the case could have been argued that what Charandas did was not permissible when one looks at the historical and contextual construction of our law. So that I didn't pay attention to, for me that was not the place to go to. When one looks at our law, it says, look, you can't cross the floor. Our law says that. When you look at our law, it says you are not elected as an individual. You're elected on a slate. And you're literally pulled by the party leader from that slate. And you look at all of that in the law. Charandas telling me that he was representing a constituency. Which constituency voted for Charandas? That was his argument, that his constituency. Charandas was a guest of a list. And so I think from a sociological jurisprudential perspective, if the judges were prepared to go beyond positivism, it could easily be argued that there was no basis in law for him to be allowed to do.
That never came up before the court. Now, but if you take that view, Mr. Alexander, then a vote really means nothing. You might as well just say, okay, the opposition has so many, the government has so many.
No. I go a little further.
Yes.
I do feel, even in the context in which I'm speaking, that the issue at hand, that you can't use a vote to pull down an entire list or an entire party, but certainly you could use the vote to influence decision making on issues. And I would separate out the matters such as a no confidence vote from the normal vote in Parliament. Normal vote in Parliament, you are expected to exercise your mind and your intellect in some way towards a contribution to decision making. But what Charandas did was not a contribution towards decision making. Charandas literally used the vote as if he were representing some constituency to dismantle a body of people who entertained his presence.
All right, I don't want to really litigate that matter because I want a couple others. No, it's worthy to discuss, but I do have some other questions. Donald Ramatar, former president, is on quite a campaign. He feels passionately about returning to first past the post system of elections. Which side do you stand on that?
I believe in the hybrid system.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the case of Guyana, we need to address two issues that we discussed in the constitutional reform process. One is accountability, which first past the post facilitates in a greater way than PR. But the other one is representation, which PR facilitates.
Good.
And I feel that a hybrid system where you have a sufficient number of seats that are what they call top-up seats should be put aside to ensure we have proportionality, and below that we should have constituencies. But we agreed at the level of constitutional reform process to a hybrid system. We further agreed that we were only using 10 constituencies to facilitate the delivery of elections at a particular time because of the court ruling, and that we revisit the question of constituencies. We have not done that. Ramatar was president, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I am of the firm conviction that we have to be able, and our constitution speaks that, our constitution speaks to this question of accountability.
Yes, it does.
Right? I am of the firm view that one can achieve that accountability given, if you look at our electoral results, we don't need more than 10 in extreme circumstances. Right now it's a one seat difference.
That's right.
So we don't need more
And
than
it has been for several years.
So we don't need more than 10 or 5 seats
But
to balance the equation.
let me take you up on this issue. We in fact have something like a constituency, because you do have in the Representation of the People Act provision for 25.
No, I'm talking about single member constituencies.
All right, I'm coming there. I'm coming there. So you have it there, but then you negate it by saying with this evil 11B of the Representation of the People Act, we say you got to have a party that.
All right, good. I'm with you. I'm talking first of all of single member constituencies, and secondly, constituencies that allow individuals to contest.
Yeah, but that's such an again, I keep using the word evil, but this is so destructive. That 11B.
I believe we should allow individuals to contest.
But and that's the democratic principle. People must be able to choose a person.
I have
Of their liking.
absolutely, I'm an advocate of that.
You know,
More constituencies, balancing it with the top up, and allowing individuals
that's
to
correct.
contest.
That's correct.
And some of it gain acceptance
Acceptability, yeah.
in the local government system.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
But in the local government system,
In there, it's
I believe you can go purely constituency.
absolutely.
Purely
Look, you know, you and I agreed on a lot of things at University Congress as well. We seem to be agreeing on lots of these matters. Well, let me see if we can agree on this one. I have been a public advocate of saying the failure to regulate political parties is the most unlawful entity in this country. It is a hive of money laundering and tax evasion and whatever you want. Are you in favor of party regulation?
I'm in favor of party regulation. The public don't know parties are not legal entities.
That's correct.
The only legal
It's
recognition
amazing.
of parties occurs when they register for election.
That's correct.
But I do believe that there should be some.
So GCOM recognizing a non-entity, to use the Channel language.
Right. There should be some regulation of political parties, and the regulation of political parties should be related to another question which you raised, the financial issue.
Yes.
The financial issue. They should be related.
You know, I keep saying this, look, you have a political party probably going in government next month, next election, and they don't have financial accountability within their own system. They're not acculturated, they're not disciplined to accountability, which you just talked about.
Yeah.
We have to fix this evil that you have political party criminals.
They should be regulated. They should be regulated.
I mean, the money laundering that probably that has to take place.
And if you're in government, you don't do anything about it.
You know, I think our SOCU is our FIU is a joke when it comes to this. Now, it's possible that they can't identify it. But where does this money come from? How is it accounted for?
It's a big issue. It's a real big issue. And it distorts the democracy.
It's criminal, because you can do what you want. People go and then it encourages personal theft. Some leader of the APNU or the AFC or the PPP goes to the States and says, look, I raise so much, and come back and hand the party, and you don't know, probably lying.
Yeah. Christmas goes back to what I said in 2007. I might not have dealt with the main issue. In 2007, when I was nominated to contest elections as a lead in the PNC, my campaign was based on what I call the need for a new political culture. And all that I've been saying here today fits into that frame.
Where did you stand in relation to Winston Murray?
I supported Winston Murray.
You supported him.
But by then, I was out of the party.
Okay.
I supported him from the outside. I supported him.
Anyway.
I stepped down in 1994, I think it was. Stepped down from contesting for chairman of the party to give away the money.
Mm-hmm.
I in fact encouraged him and stepped down and became the vice chairman of the 1994.
We agree on too many things. Let me talk. You know, I said when I passed the threshold of 70 years old, I will not seek elected office of any form, not even the tennis association.
And I stopped before 70.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the question of the opposition. How well do you think the opposition is performing in this current parliament?
I have little regard for Parliament. I witnessed Manzoor Nadir as a parliamentarian when he got on to the PPPs, when he coalesced with the PPP.
Mm-hmm.
Him saying the opposition will have its say, the government will have its way. He said that. He now does.
And he's now the speaker.
Now lives it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how good any opposition could do in that parliament. I feel that we need mechanisms for more qualified majorities for decision making that will ensure that people have to get consensus on issues. This simple majority thing in this plural society isn't working.
Well,
Of course, some things you have, but I think that there's some fundamental things in which there should be qualified majority. Secondly, I think we have to get to the point where some of our conventions are enshrined. For example, we had agreed in Parliament that fundamental issues will always go to the select committee.
Yes, yeah.
That was agreed.
And it's so it ought to.
And you have a government which says, you know, we're in a hurry. Now, so I really can't judge an opposition party's performance in Parliament.
Well, what about outside the Parliament?
In a Parliament where there's no scope for performance.
What about outside the Parliament?
Outside of Parliament, I think that in some regards, Mr. Norton's honeymoon is not quite over. But in other regards, I do not think that the party sufficiently embraces the electoral system which I referred to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is to ensure that the parliamentarians are associated with geographical areas
Yes.
as much as they're associated with ministerial areas or shadows, so that they are constantly, routinely working with the people. Structures will help, electoral structures will help, because you know this is my constituency.
Yes,
I would
yes.
say that even outside of those structures, that is the way parties should operate. And I cannot say that the opposition necessarily is operating in that manner, and that would be a grave area of concern.
Does it trouble you that in this Parliament we have the highest number of persons against whom charges have been brought? That's a fundamental shift in political culture in this country.
Well, not in political culture. Political culture hasn't been that different. Hasn't been that different. Because we embrace wrongdoing as a way of life. The nation, that is at the top of the system. You're seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I said it earlier, we've gotten to the point in Guyana where we embrace wrongdoing. So nobody's passing judgment on those guys. Are we is we. You don't go against your own.
But I sometimes wonder if people even recognize. But where
our value system.
Value
system.
Where is the intelligentsia,
Our
so-called
value system.
intelligentsia in this country?
Chris, I restrain myself. But when a nation could overlook accusations that have not been pushed back against of academic fraud in determining who leads the nation.
Yes.
Well, I got to go back to the question you asked. You probably at the bottom of the pit.
And we
And a nation could accept that.
we have the vice report involving the vice president.
Right?
These are not good things for a country.
In a bad way. And the bad way is centered around largely the ethos that we have embraced and the absence of values, national values across the board that we should all embrace and not say that everything we do is politics.
Yeah. Politics get blamed for criminality. Now, in our country, we hardly talk international affairs anymore. You wonder. I mean, it's unbelievable, but that's the case. You studied in Russia. I'm not sure this is going to make friends with some of my Russian trained friends. Russia has had a very, very poor week in their war with Ukraine, or special military
Operation.
What's your view of that?
Poor week or
No. This whole war by Russia, is that civilized?
I don't think the war. I don't think what Putin has done could be justified. I don't think what Putin has done could be justified. It's not justified. It can't be justified. But having said that, on the landscape of immorality as the basis for the way things are conducted, including international affairs, I think that the West has to take some responsibility for creating the environment for that immorality.
For Russia to invade Ukraine?
In this sense, Chris, as I said, in international politics, morality seems not to be at work.
National interest, huh?
National interests. And the way in which the West has treated the post-Gorbachev issue based on their own commitments, they have reneged on the creation of a certain atmosphere, a certain status quo, a certain international regime. And it's in that context that Gorbachev has gone beyond the pale. So he's gone beyond the
Gorbachev?
pale. Not Gorbachev,
Putin.
sorry.
Putin.
May God rest it.
No, yes, he died a couple of weeks
Putin
ago.
has gone beyond the pale.
Yeah.
But there's an environment that could have made a greater difference to the possibilities of Putin being manifest the way he's manifested.
There is taking place now at an international conference of Russia, China, India, Pakistan. Imagine those two. Do you see us? We had BRICS. We're not sure where that has gone. Do you see the world moving back into a Cold War era?
Not exactly. If one sees a Cold War as one versus the other, I think the diversity is greater now, and so I don't see us having exactly that Cold War. It's not ideology any longer that's guiding people. Nations are playing situational politics, and so the chances are that you're going to have at different times different configurations and in the pursuit of interests, and so it's not going to be the kind
That's
of
why you have India and Pakistan or India and China.
interests. interest of
I
siding
think my
with-
operator should be calling on me to
of siding
finish.
with ideology.
So it's 9:08. Let's stop at this point, Vincent. I want to thank you very much. We can continue the conversation another time.
Absolutely no problem.
Operators and viewers, thank you. Good night, and I'll see you next week.